lies at the intersection of education, technology, and design. I'm a fourth-generation educator. I've been programming since I was 10, and I spent all my school years designing experiences for others, whether it was designing websites or directing documentaries. I was lucky enough to spend my formative years studying computer science at Stanford. When I got to Stanford, I found myself asking the existential questions. What did I want my life to be about? Where was the world headed, and how could I make a dent in that? At first, I thought it was transportation. I'd always loved cars, and I'd closely followed the work of the Stanford autonomous car team. They did a lot of the groundwork for the Google autonomous car, and way before the world took notice, it was obvious to me that this is the future. I spent some time, called in all the favors that I could, and I found myself as the youngest member of the team. Thinking about the future, though, is a dangerous profession. I realized there's actually a much bigger problem out there. Look at this map of all the jobs in every state of the US. What do you notice? 3.5 million people in the US alone get their living from driving a truck. Add on top of that all the taxi drivers and the delivery drivers and the bus and the train drivers in every other country in the world. What happens to all these drivers when autonomous cars become the norm? And by the way, for those of you who think this is not a problem we have to worry about for a long time, Daimler's already testing a self-driving, mass-produced truck on real roads. And Tesla's already introduced their autopilot feature to real customers, and they want to sell fully autonomous cars in 3 years. And by the way, this is not the only profession in which software is taking away jobs. The data shows that occupations like secretaries, accountants, and call center workers are already being affected. So back to the original question. What does all this technological progress mean for the future of jobs? The pessimists love to hit the panic button. They scare us with visions of the future where computers take over all the jobs and humans are unemployed. I'm not here to scare you. I'm here to tell you and show you how our history tells us that the future will be better. Only a few hundred years ago, the world was employed in agriculture. All of us were employed in agriculture. The world's richest countries, the most valuable thing that people could do was agriculture. And then the Industrial Revolution happened, and people started to get jobs in manufacturing. The richest countries in the world were now the ones that did manufacturing: America, England, Germany. And then not so long ago, these countries realized that manufacturing is actually not the most valuable thing they can do. They started offshoring manufacturing to cheaper countries like China and India and Mexico and Brazil, and instead moved on to what we call knowledge work: doctors, engineers, and lawyers. The point that I'm making is that our future is not one to be scared of. The back of the iPhone reads, "Designed by Apple in California, assembled in China." My point is, again, not that robots will take away all the jobs, but that the jobs of the future will just be different. Some people say 65% of the jobs in the world that people will be doing in 10 years haven't even been invented yet. As Sir Ken Robinson says, if you think of it, children starting school this year will be retiring in 2065. Nobody has a clue what the world will look like in 5 years' time, and yet we're meant to be educating them for it. In the 19th century, people used to be measured by the physical amount of force their arms and legs could exert over a period of time. Then we invented machines, and we decided those should be doing the manual labor. And in the 20th century, people were measured by the computing power of their left brains. My point is that software will soon take over those jobs as well. And in the 21st century, what will matter is the right brain. It is not answering questions that matters, it is asking the right question. Because answers are free in a world with supercomputers in our pockets and all the world's information in the cloud. What matters are not the skills you learn in college, but the skills you learned in preschool. And by the way, I'm not the only one who's saying this. IBM did a study of 1,500 CEOs globally and found that creativity is ranked as the most crucial factor for future success. Newsweek and Harvard Business Review are already claiming that our companies are facing a severe creativity crisis. And if you look on LinkedIn, creative is the most used word around the world. My point is that software is eating all the non-creative jobs. In the future, all humans will do creative jobs, and so it is important to know how to measure and improve creativity. Last year, I embarked on a journey and started Lemonade to solve that problem. We're bringing together cutting-edge data science, human computation, and decades worth of research from psychology to solve this problem. Think about it this way. If you wanted to understand human behavior and social interaction, one crazy way to do that would be to build an app called WhatsApp. You would have all the data about every message every person in the world sends or doesn't send. And then, obviously it's hard to build a WhatsApp, and also you have to make sure the data is used responsibly. But now you would have all the data. You have so much data, more data than the entire field of academia in their entire history. Now think about what you would build if you wanted to solve the same problem for creativity, to measure and improve creativity. Now you might be wondering, is it even possible to make someone more creative? But what you might not know is that we're actually already experts at making people less creative. Every day in every school around the world, we're drilling creativity out of our children. Our televisions and our smartphones and our social networks are turning us into addicted consumers instead of empowered creators. If you look on YouTube, for every hour of video that humans upload to YouTube, other humans watch 1,400 hours of video on YouTube. That's a lot. So, I would love to share with you really quickly 3 myths that I learned that some people have about creativity. 1, creative things are outlandish and often useless. They think that creativity has no value other than its originality. But the research definition of creativity is actually originality combined with value. Ideas that are purely original are interesting, but they're not creative until they actually solve a problem. This is something we have to learn so that we can stop treating creativity non-seriously as a soft skill relegated to artists and children. Second, creativity is subjective and it cannot be measured. Now, even if it was subjective, it doesn't mean it couldn't be measured. Your music taste or your movie's choice, it is subjective. But companies like Amazon and Pandora and Spotify and Netflix, they make a pretty good guess of what you would like to see and watch and buy. However, the bigger point is that creativity is actually not subjective at all. Researchers have known this for 30 years. If I gave each of you in this room a list of 5 things and asked you to rank them in order of how creative they are, your rankings would actually be incredibly similar. Third, this is the worst one. Ooh. People believe that creativity is random. You have to sit around waiting for inspiration to happen, and then one fortuitous day, a fairy smiles on you, and then an apple falls on your head, and then inspiration happens. Or they believe that creativity is randomly distributed in the world. You have to be born a creative genius to have it. But we've always believed that about everything. If you go back to the 19th century, when only 15% of the world could read, and you asked an educator, hey, what percentage of the world is capable of reading a book? They would say 25%. We know that is not true. It is just a question of mindset. Now, the problem that we're solving, many have said is impossible. The question that I care about is not whether it is impossible or possible, but rather, what would we be able to achieve if it were possible? Would we be able to live in a world where parents don't tell their creative children, but you can't get a job doing that? Would we be able to bring in the next wave of human invention, innovation, and progress? Can we save 100 million people unemployment and bring them fulfilling work? Stay tuned.
So now that we have creativity measured, how do we fund it?